Okay, we're back, and it's COMP2068 Advanced Web Programming, and it's week 9, lesson 9, part 2 of our broadcast. First part, we kind of did an intro to TypeScript, and we did some really cool stuff. But you're going to say, so how do I use this stuff anyway? I know I did TypeScript and I did it, did this stuff, and just when you're on the break, I went around and I created a couple of other properties. These are private variables, so let's call this what they are. These are private instance variables, right? This is something that should be familiar to you, right? So I'm going to save these things. It's going to transpile and show us over here what it is, right? Private instance variables. And notice that I don't see them up here because before the constructor function, you don't see these declarations, right? Why is that? Because in JavaScript doesn't care about declaring variables, right? If I go var and the name of a variable, it doesn't work. It doesn't mean anything. I can't pre-declare variables unless I assign them, right? Because it needs an assignment. JavaScript requires an assignment, or else it can't do type inference, right? Whereas in TypeScript, I can. Here's something else. If I hover over Tom, right, I notice a person. And I get all of the stuff because it has type inference. It knows that Tom is a new person, as an example, right? And this is all nice, right? But what I want to do is I want to split up Tom, right? I don't want to have my person class and my usage of my person class here in the same file, because it can become quite cluttered, especially if I have 20 different classes that I want to use or whatever, right? So how do we create modules? How do I create modules in this thing, right? Well, here's how you do it. Now, this is a we do together thing, so please participate because you won't remember if you don't do, right? So here in my index.html, you notice how I have this file and it links to my app.js. I want to create another location. I want to create a namespace, right? For my objects, all my objects. Like for example, this person object that I'm creating. All these modules I'm making. I want to create a location for it, and I want to make it so it's logical. So I want to right-click here. I want to create a new folder, and I'm going to name it the same as I want to name my namespace. I'm going to call it objects, whatever the objects folder is, right? Inside my objects folder, I want to create a new file that I want to call, right, person.ts. It's another TypeScript file, all right? But in my TypeScript file, what I want to do with my person.ts file is I want to name it as a module, right? So I go module, and I want to give it a name, objects, and I want to kind of give it a bit of a space here, right? And when I save, if I was actually to see my module.js file, or my person.js file, notice how it's empty. Even though I put module objects here, there's nothing here right now, because I don't have anything inside my module. What do I want to put in my module? I want to put my person class. I'm going to go back to my app.ts file. Here it is, right? And I'm going to grab my person class, this whole thing, and I'm going to cut it. I'm going to go back to my module here and paste it, right? So this is I'm pasting into my module, right? And in order for me to have my person class exposed, I have to put the export keyword in front of it. That's the rule, all right? Now, when I look at my person.js file, so here's my person.ts file, and over here as my person.js file, it's this. Tell me how that's beautiful on the right. Sorry, but this seems to be a lot more cluttered than this. Right? This is clearly a class. Here you have an anonymous inner function, an inner self-executing function, right? There's two of them actually. There's one on the outside, called for objects, and there's one on the inside for my person class, right? So this is the layer, these both two things, these are the layers in terms of my namespaces. So how do I access, if I want to use my person class in my app.ts file, how do I access my person class? How would I use it? How do I declare a person of Tom as a new person? How do I do that? Is it just Tom is equal to new person? Is that enough? No, because it's in different namespace now. It's in objects. So I got to go Tom is equal to new objects.person because it's in my objects module. Okay? Namespacing. Okay, but I'm not done yet. So I've created my here is my module objects, right? And notice how in my, I'll go into my index.html for a second here. Here's my index.html. I have to add it in here because my index.html is equivalent to my app.js file in Node.js. It is the thing that binds all my JavaScript together. That means in my index.html file, I'm going to put a reference to this new module I made, right? So I'm going to go here into my script. And let's just get rid of this to start typing it off, right? So I'll say, I'm just going to copy this one, right? And put it over here. And we're going to say this one here is objects /person.js. That's the path. Okay? Not done yet. This is the first thing I need to do. So I need to put it inside my objects, my index.html file, number one. 2, I got an error. Look on the bottom here. I got an error. I got an error in my app.ts file because it doesn't know what person is. The reason why is because it's not right. I need to make a reference to this. I need to make a reference up here. And I have to, I kind of mentioned the reference path. I'm going to use 3 forward slashes. 1, 2, 3, right? New notation. Open bracket. Open angle bracket, right? Reference path equals to, in brackets, the name of the path, which is, I'm in my root, right? So objects person.ts, close bracket, save. Still got an error, right? And the reason why is because person doesn't exist anymore. It's not person, it's objects.person. Now that works, right? I've renamespaced my objects, right? How does this look? How does this objects.person look when it comes to, when I look at the actual JavaScript files, right? So here's the JavaScript equivalent. Still the same, right? It is JavaScript. When I use it like this, it's exactly the same, right? But how about my TS file? So here's my TS file, my person.ts, person.js. Big difference. And don't worry about the underline here that I'm getting. It says duplicate identifier, but this is on the JavaScript side, right? So as you notice, what I want to try and build here is clean code. Clean code, right? When I do it this way, it makes sense. Why? I'm encapsulating it into a module, right? That's the first thing I want to do. Here's my module. And I want to export the module, anything that's in the module. I don't have to export my class. If I was to take this export keyword away, so gone, and save it, now I'm going to have an error again. If I go back to my app.ts file, it doesn't know anything about person because I haven't exported it. I can expose or hide anything I want in my modules, right? And I can have more than one class or only one class in my module. I like to have one class, one module, right? Actually, one module, multiple classes, but different files. So one file, one class. That's how I like to do it, right? Nice and easy. You see it in Java. We see it in C#. We don't want to use more than one class, right? So if I go back to my class here, right? This is what it looks like. One class, one file. Same module, same namespace. So I have objects, a bunch of objects. I can have not just a person class. I can have other kind of things, right? Questions so far about TypeScript? All right. Yes. Sure. Oh, other objects for the same class? No. It's already been defined. I can't redefine my class, right? I can add other classes and other functions even that are outside the class, like a utility function that has no class, right? Yes. I can overload. Yeah, so I can overload. I can have more than one constructor, if that's what you're talking about. Yes, I can do all that stuff. I can have abstract classes, and I can even do something called generics, which are going to help us a lot, right? And lambda expressions. You can do all those things with TypeScript. And doing that with JavaScript is a pain in the you-know-what. So really powerful stuff. Like you can see that now your mind should be going, if I can do this, object-oriented programming with JavaScript, oh my God, I can do anything, right? And I can link modules together. So now, how do I apply this stuff to other things? Well, Remember I asked you to download a bunch of other stuff, like for example Bower. Let's add Jquery, all right, to the mix, right? So I want to add Jquery, and I don't want to download Jquery. I just want to do it. So when I go into this, stop my server here. So server stops, and I want to use Bower to install my Jquery and other dependencies. Now remember, Bower is a package manager for the web, not for Node. It's like how we use NPM for Node. Bower is for the rest of the web, for downloading Jquery and Bootstrap and all this other stuff we need that has nothing to do with NPM, right, or Node. So first I need to do a Bower init. That's the first thing I need to do. And what Bower init does, it creates the same kind of bower.json file that kind of describes, you know, my project. So I'm just going to kind of accept everything. Okay, I'm just going to kind of step through here, and it looks good. I'll say yes and accept it. Right. So there's my bower.json file. Take a look. Here's my bower.json file. It's just a JSON file that looks very similar to a package.json file. By the by, and FYI, you can use Bower alongside of Node, no problem. Right? Like for example, if we want to use Jquery or Bootstrap or Font Awesome or whatever you want, you can use Bower as the way to get our packages from the web without having to go to the website and say, okay, I want to go to jquery.com, download it, Jquery, put it inside the thing, get the latest version. I don't have to worry about all that stuff. It does all the stuff for you. It's a dependency manager too. So let's install Jquery, right, for our project. How do we do that? We just do this. We say Bower install Jquery -- save. Gee, that looks familiar. And then it grabs Jquery, it drops it into something called Bower components, right? And inside Bower components, you have Jquery, distribution, and then there's your files. Bower install Jquery -- save. So what Bower does is it allows me to get these different files. Now I want to link Jquery to my files, right? And I want to use TypeScript to get code hinting for Jquery, an external module. Now, this is the power of TypeScript. I can use, because Jquery, it's you know, if you don't know Jquery, you don't know what maybe you don't know the functions and the library, the Jquery library, right? So let's see if we can get some of this stuff. Notice how I got a problem here, right? Notice how my GitHub says, whoa, man, you got all these extra files, 98 files. Why? Because in my git ignore file, I should put in something called Bower _ modules, right? Or components. If I don't put that in there, then now it goes back to 9. It ignores, I don't want to send my Bower components up online. That means I never have to send up things like Jquery and Bootstrap, all that stuff to go up on GitHub. Why? Right? It's just the regular stuff. I can just load that as a dependency just like we would with NPM modules, and it'll ignore all the stuff to go up to GitHub, which is really kind of cool. Okay, cool. So there's my Bower components, right? Okay, so I've got Jquery, and how do I link it to my file now? Because I've got to go into link it in. So here's my Jquery. Well, I want to put it in before my app.js. And notice how I put my objects and my person.js. I put it before my app.js. Why? Why do I want to link my object that I want to use? I want to consume this object in app.js, but I'm putting it before. Why? Yeah. Well, I have to declare, I'm kind of declaring it here, even though Jquery hoists everything anyway. So you can declare a function way down here and use it way up here before it's even declared, right? It's good practice to do this. Declare it first, then use it, right? That's the good way of doing it. So we declare a class, then we're using the class, right? That's what we're doing here. Same thing with Jquery. I want to declare Jquery, and then down here I want to use it. So let's link our Jquery module. Now where is it? It's here. It's inside our Bower components, right? So we have to go to Bower components, Jquery dist, and then jquery.main.js. That's the path. So let's do that in there. So script source equals to, right? Bower _ components, right? / Jquery / dist / jquery.min.js. Okay, so now I've got Jquery, but I can't do anything with it, even though I know I have TypeScript. If I go into my app.js and I start using, or my app.ts and try to use it, I'm not going to get any code hinting for Jquery because I need something else. I need a type definition library for Jquery. Jquery is a big set of libraries, right? They give us a lot of different functionality, right? And we need TypeScript to understand how to give us IntelliSense code hinting on this. And we use a separate file alongside with our JavaScript file to give us this code hinting called the type definition file. And it's usually in the form of whatever the name of the library is, .d.ts, D for definition, .typescript, right? But now we would normally have to go and find it on the web. There's a site that's called Definitely Typed, and you can go up there and download the definition and put it in your files, and then make a reference to that, just like we did that reference by hand. You have to do all that work. Not so anymore, because remember I got you to download that TSD? So let's do the new one. So TSD install Jquery -- save. So now what it does is it goes out to the web, and it grabs our file. Let's take a look here. Here's our typings, right? It grabs our files, right? So for our TSD files, here's our TSD files. And notice how it takes the latest version of my Jquery definition file, the exact commit, right? And it puts it in here because this is the version for the type definition, so we can get good code hinting, good IntelliSense. Okay, good. And now that we've done that, now that we've added it in, and without that, by the way, you don't get any IntelliSense at all. If I go to app.ts and I start, oh look, I got a problem. It says, oh yeah, because we took it away, right? Because we didn't expose it. Yeah. Let's go put it back. Export. See how TypeScript gave me code hinting? I wouldn't have known. I would have forgotten. And I would have tried to run it and chase after it. But TypeScript said, wait, Tom, you got a problem. You forgot to expose it on your object. That's good. That's what we want. We want good tooling. That's what TypeScript does for us. Whereas if you write JavaScript on its own, there's no tooling. And now you're needle in a haystack time again, right? Okay, let's go try and do that. So app.ts, I want to use Jquery here just to check it out to see if I can get access to it. And I can do that by going $, and if I go document, as an example, there's my document, right? And if I go dot for Jquery, I should be able to get some code hinting. But how come I can't get code hinting for Jquery? Well, for a couple things, first of all. One, we have to build my libraries again. Here's my TSD, right? Under my TSD file, my typings, I also have a tsd.d.ts, and what it does is it creates this reference to Jquery, right? So there's my path, jquery.d.ts, right? So it looks inside here and looks in here, right? This is my big type definition for Jquery. Take a look, it's massive. It talks about all the data types and all this kind of stuff. That's really important. And the other place, there's two places. That's one, and it also talks about the exact location of where to get the type definition for Jquery, which is right here. So Boris Yankov definitely typed. That's where the repo is. And if you wanted to look that up manually, let's just go in here and look it up. I can go definitely typed. Not that org.tsd. Sorry, that's not the one I want. Definitely typed. Notice how it's on GitHub. And notice what you get on GitHub. You get all these files. So every kind of library, Angular, other things too, right? Big.js, big screen, whatever, anything else you can think of. Bootstrap, we're going to add that in a second, right? So a bunch of different ones. But you have to go in here, grab the type definition, let's say for Bootstrap. Here's Bootstrap. I can go in here, grab the type definition, download this one, and put it inside my thing, create a reference to it. That's a lot of work, right? Whereas I can get it to be done for me. Okay, that's what this does for me. App.ts. But remember the steps. I need to add it into my files, right? That's the first piece. And for me to check it, right, to see that it's there, I can see that if I click into it, I can get to it. That's good. That's how I can test to see that that is part of my files, right? So that works. That is the proper path for it, my Jquery, right? It goes to objects and then from there to things. So now I can make some annotations here. I can say inside my file something like this. Here are my JavaScript libraries, or JavaScript libraries, right? And here are my application scripts. It's different, right? So I can kind of separate the concerns there, so I can kind of add one and the other. I got a few errors, right, that I'm showing right now. Let's take a look in the errors. And if I click on them, it says the left-hand side for the for statement isn't good, right? Because somewhere down the line, my jQuery.min.js has been corrupted. It's giving me an error. That is so funny, right? Happens, by the way, sometimes where you get this kind of problem. And why? Because I saved it, right? My issue, not yours. And I can ignore it if I want to. But that's how it does. jQuery will give you, or TypeScript will give you errors in the error count wherever it sees them. Right? We're going to ignore those few errors now for a second. If you notice how I closed that file down and the errors went away? Because even in jQuery, there are some issues that TypeScript has picked up, knowing that there's problems, right? So if that's true, can you imagine the errors we're going to get in something like an Express or a Node? Let's go back and let's do a couple more things. So I got my Bower components, but I want to add in, I know that in order for me to use Bootstrap, I need to use jQuery first. And I want to include Bootstrap in my files, right? So how do I do that? I'm going to use Bower. So I'm going to go back to this. Let's do another little thing. So I'm going to say Bower install, do it with me guys, Bootstrap, right, minus save. So it's going to save it as a dependency. Okay, cool. So now if I go into my Bower components, I can see that I also have Bootstrap. And I don't just have my JS files, but I also have my font files and my CSS. And it all comes down right away. I don't have to work for it. I don't have to go find Bootstrap or download it. It's the latest version of Bootstrap that I'm getting. So let's install it in my file, right? And I didn't do this in the first class, so sorry for those people. But let's go back and try this out. So how would I do this? So now I know that jQuery needs a CSS file for it to work. So up here, I'm going to kind of say, here are my CSS files. All right, and in here I need to make a reference to that. So I need to make a link, and then rel is equal to style sheet, right? And then my href, right, is equal to where it is, right? So it's under Bower components / bootstrap / dist for distribution / CSS / you can see where it is, right? bootstrap.min.css. So bootstrap.min.css, right? So I add that in. And I also want to add in the other style sheet for the themes, for the kind of the optional themes. So I want to kind of copy this and kind of paste this in. Right? And then instead of Bootstrap alone, it's going to be bootstrap.theme.min. Right? So just --theme.min. So that's both the Bootstrap CSS files. Right? And of course, I want to add Bootstrap after I get jQuery. So here's my jQuery script. And under jQuery, I have to have jQuery running first. I need to get Bootstrap, so I'm going to kind of go back in here into my JavaScript part and then get bootstrap.min.js. Right, so I'll put that in. So I'll say script source. I'll type this out by hand. Bower components. So why is Bower components another? There's another good reason to use it. Bootstrap /dist /js bootstrap.min.js. Can anyone else see that another reason to use Bower? Why it's a good reason to use Bower as opposed to downloading everything from the web by yourself? Why is that giving me there? Scripts. Anyone else see another reason for using Bower? Why would I rather use Bower than downloading it myself? Well, from a dependency manager perspective, if I want your version to work exactly like my version and not have any breaking changes, right? Now I'm controlling it, right? Because if I put it up on GitHub and you download everything, unless I put up the actual file on GitHub, right? Unless I say just download jQuery, I need jQuery, these are the dependencies. But if I don't put them in, Bower allows me not to include the files, my JavaScript files, right? As an example, and yet points to the right library, so I can always go do bower install, just like I would do npm install. As long as I have my dependency list there, if you download my file now, if you go bower install, it'll download all the dependencies and put them in the right places for you. Right? That's the beautiful thing. So the packages are smaller, they're more controlled, and you can do more dependency management, if you will. Okay, so I've got my style sheets. You know what? One thing I don't have here, I've got my index.html, but I haven't followed my proper precepts. I probably want to have some kind of content folder that has my own files, my own app.css or something else. Let's add that in too. So building a full app. So new folder. We're going to call this contents, and then I'll upload to GitHub in a second. And I'll say a new file that I want to add in called app.css. And then, of course, this is just I'll put out some notes here saying this is custom CSS, but I don't have a custom CSS right now. But going back to index.html, I want to add that in there as well. So we'll do the same thing. We'll say link rel is equal to style sheet, and then href is equal to content, capital C, / right, app.css. And then there it is. So I'll put my app.css and send content. Okay, cool. This is a good place for me to upload to GitHub for people who aren't as fast as me typing. So I'm going to go here in VS Code and go. Notice there's a bunch of changes here. I have to just see if I want all these changes. And notice there's person.js and blah, 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 a bunch of changes. So I added my module, I added bower, all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to say stage them all. And in here I want to say something like, in my 13 changes, stage them all, and go added modules and dependencies. There you go. One of those. I click the ellipses. I go push, and now you should have everything on GitHub in a few seconds. There we go. GitHub is yours. Okay, cool. So I've got this piece done, right? And I sent it up to GitHub, right? And let's test it because we haven't tested it out yet. We don't know what it's going to do, right? I just installed Bootstrap. That's all I've done. So I'm going to kind of go in here and say, HTTP-server, my little server, and then run it on port 8080, right? So localhost port 8080. Bam! Hello world. Everything's the same. Right? So why is everything the same? I've installed Bootstrap, and yet everything's not really bootstrappy right now. Well, I have to refresh. No, I just have to refresh, right? And the other thing is, if I look at if I go inspect element now, and if I look at console, notice how it says failed to load resource. The server responded with a status of 404 not found. Localhost, this is important too. Bower components bootstrap dist.js bootstrap.min.js, and I spelled it wrong. Bootstrap, as opposed to bootstrap. See? That's good, right? So I want to look at this. And this is my index.html. That's another reason why it didn't work right away. So if I go to my index.html, I'm going to make sure that this is not bootstrap, but rather bootstrap. And save. That'll take care of that problem. So if I go back here and I refresh, then you can see that that's gone. That little error is gone. So I do a lot of troubleshooting here in the console when I make a regular HTML app with JavaScript. I do it here in the console, right? And I also do it, with TypeScript inside the file, like we normally would with C# or Java or what have you, right? Okay, a couple more things here. So we've added this in. Let's add some Bootstrap around this thing to make it a little more bootstrappy. So here's the other Emmet that I talked about. Remember, Emmet's the shortcut. So I'll say div dot container, right? Tab. And now I have a div with a class of container. And I'll take this stuff here, and I'll cut it, and I'll put it back inside this tab. Right, so it's a container, right? And once I put something inside a container, I get a little bit of margins on both sides of the container, because that's what Bootstrap does for us. right? So if I go back to this and refresh, I get a bit of margins, right? So it's now starting to realign with Bootstrap. And let's go back to inspect element for a second. Okay, now that's cool. What if I want to get typing for Bootstrap, right? So I can do that again. I can kind of stop my server, and I can do the same thing. If I want to modify Bootstrap and get some code hinting for Bootstrap, I do the same thing. I would say tsd install Bootstrap, right? -- save. And what it's going to do is going to go out, find Bootstrap for me, right? Download it, as well as see the dependency for jQuery, and add it in, right, in my type definition library, right? So now I can get code hinting for Bootstrap as well. So if I was going to use Bootstrap JavaScript, I can use TypeScript to get code hinting for that too. Questions so far around this stuff? Again, there's some tooling I'm doing. We've talked about Bower, we've talked about TSD, we've talked about TSC, right? These are new little tools we're going to use. But how is this all going to help us with Express, right? Well, let's do another little example. So we've added this in. I can add as many of these things in as I want, right? I can kind of continuously add stuff. Like, let's say if I wanted Font Awesome, right? I want access to Font Awesome. I think it's a good library. So first, I'll get it with Bower. So I'll go Bower, install font-awesome, right? -- save. If it exists in that format, it'll find Font Awesome. Here's 4.4, and put it into the Bower components, right? That's the first piece. Font Awesome is there. Let's take a look and see if we see it in our files. So go here are my Bower components, and here's my Bootstrap. Here's Font Awesome. So if I wanted to add in Font Awesome, right, I would definitely add that in after Bootstrap. And notice that Font Awesome does a couple things. It has CSS, and here's my Bootstrap CSS. Right, that's Bootstrap. I want to look at Font Awesome CSS. fontawesome.min.css. Let's do the same thing. So I'm just going to take this whole thing here and copy it and modify it. Right, so kind of put that in, put this in. So instead of Bootstrap, we're going to go Font Awesome, font-awesome, right? Dist, right? Because Font Awesome, does it have a dist? No. You have to go CSS right away. So there is no dist for Font Awesome, right? Because it goes, look at the way the path is, Font Awesome CSS. And then fontawesome.min.css, right? So font-awesome.min.css. And that adds that in. And now if I want to, when I say hello world, I can put in a world, like a home in front of my hello. How do I do that? And if you know how to do Font Awesome, right? Let's just put it in here, right next to the h1 tag, a little tag. So I'll say an I tag, right? And inside my I tag, I have a class of fa-home, right? If I've done this correctly. And what I want to do is I just space it out there so I can type it in. I'm going to put it back now with a little bit of a space. And then the little home is going to appear hopefully there. And let's just go over here, re-energize our server, right? Which is what I want to do. Go back to my HTML. And if I did things properly, a little house appears with Font Awesome, right? Because Font Awesome has an amazing collection of little icons and stuff. If you don't know that already, if you want to go there and see that, so if I go to Fonts Awesome, and if I go there, it's amazing how many little fonts it has. And it's the kind of the de facto standard. I like using it a lot with Bootstrap. It's what people do nowadays. If I was to look at some different fonts, if I want to look at the icon list, there are tons and tons of them. You can see these are all the different icons you can include just by including Font Awesome CSS. Yep. No. But what happens is if I start typing, right, and not here, but if you take it into Visual Studio, yes, there is. Visual Studio and Dreamweaver and those kind of proprietary software beyond Visual Studio Code, they really have some great IntelliSense, even better than what we're getting here, right? So if I go back into here, and if I start typing that off again, like if I was to, do by hand, if I go class, right, is equal to, and if I start typing FA kind of space, it'll bring up the suggestion because it knows, about font awesome, right? In Visual Studio. Once you declare your CSS, automatically it's you get code hinting. Right? That's why Visual Studio is so powerful. So we got font awesome, we've got Bootstrap, we got everything here that we want, and we also have some cool typings here. And the typings are kept in its own little folder for Bootstrap and Jquery if you want to do some kind of advanced scripting for Jquery or Bootstrap. Now, if I want to go into, again, if I go into my app.ts file and I want to have access to my Jquery, I could do something like this. Like this, if, I can say something like this. Notice how it comes up, documents, right? .ready. Look at all the Jquery options that come up. Like it's all kinds of code hinting ready for Jquery. So even if you don't know Jquery, you can figure it out. If document.ready, it's a method, right? If it's true that document.ready is true, whatever, here's my method, then maybe I'm going to put something like this. I'm going to say, console.log document is ready. Document is ready. Which means after the document loads, we encapsulate things in document.ready. And what Jquery does is very similar to what we've been doing so far. If I looked at the app.js file now, here's my app.js, you can see that how it's doing that. It's the same kind of code. Nothing's changed here. All we're doing is we're consuming the libraries that we've included, which is really powerful, right? Questions so far? What have I done, right? I've talked about a few new tools, right? TypeScript being amongst the first ones. Next week, we're going to get into converting Express, the Express module we made, into TypeScript. How do I do that? And we're going to make it from scratch. We're going to make a very small application into TypeScript, right? We're going to talk about that. Normally this week, we're supposed to be an intro to Angular that I'm pushing off. We're going to talk about that in a second. I'm going to go into that, how to do Angular and where to get the smarts for that, right? But let's just do a quick and dirty one that I want to talk about. First of all, let me update this into GitHub for you guys. So I'm going to go where it says changes and click plus. It means all of these changes have been included. And I'm going to say added font awesome. Okay. And notice how bower.json got updated, my index got updated, my TSD got updated, all these different things got updated, and my app.ts I just changed. And then even my bootstrap.d.ts, that got added in, right? All this kind of stuff got added. And then I'm going to go to here and push. And now all my changes have been pushed to GitHub in a second. Here we go. So kind of really good, there's a good workflow that I'm showing you here, right? You've got your bower. There's one piece that we're missing, by the way. Gulp or grunt, all right? And who knows what gulp or grunt is? It's a task runner, right? So I can use gulp or grunt to do things like compile for me. I can do that. Or I can use it to do things, other things like restart my server. Or I can do things like compile from SCSS into CSS. If you're someone who uses Sass as an example, right? It'll do all that stuff for you. It'll also do things like compress. If I want to compress all my files and make them super compressed, minify all my files before I launch them up to the server, Gulp can take care of those tasks for you, right? So instead of you minifying every single time, it'll minify on save. Right? Once I save my files, Gulp launches, and then I'm done. It's kind of a task runner that helps me from a workflow perspective. It helps me improve my workflow. Okay, so I've kind of done this. Let's pull in one more file just to give you an example of how many errors we're going to get here. So I'm going to kind of minify all this stuff, right? And what I want to do is stop my server just for a second, please. Here's my server stopped. Kill this thing. Yeah, close all my windows. And what I want to do is pull in that other file we had in from last week, this COMP2068 week 8, right? We did an express app, right? Let's pull this into this, okay? And let's start building it again. And this is another example here. So here's our express app. It's all JavaScript. We showed it, it worked, right? Let's convert it to TypeScript. Start on just my app.js, and then we'll stop this piece and we'll go into some Angular stuff. So here's my app.js. How do I convert it? I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to rename it, right, to app.ts. That's the first step. Whoa, look at all those errors. How come I'm getting the errors? So I don't know what require is because I don't have node installed, because I don't have my task runner, because I don't have my tsconfig. I got to do all that kind of stuff here. So let's do that really quickly. So how do I do that? In this file, I'm going to say, again, for the next one, I need to, in the root, I'm going to add a new file called tsconfig. That's the first thing when you convert an existing project into TypeScript, right? TypeScript is tsconfig. And the first thing I'm going to press Control Space, no confirm. Oh, well, how about I rename it properly? tsconfig.json. Oh, Tom, I can't believe you're already getting tired. tsconfig.json. How about that? Hey, now Control Space. Enter. Notice how I get this. And what are these things? Target is ES5. That's ECMAScript 5. That's the target. There's other targets you can put in. ECMAScript 3 for an older version of JavaScript that's not supported on some browsers. You can also choose AMD instead of CommonJS for a different way of converting things, especially from a module perspective, how modules are done, right? From a compatibility perspective. And as well as I can choose source maps or not, right? Okay, it says no task runner configured. Configure my task runner, right? So this is the same thing I had last time. For you guys, for people who are running on the school computers, you have to do all this again. Go to VS Code, make a VS Code folder, make a task.json file, and then I'm going to just kill all this. So same thing I did last time. You have to do all the similar steps. I don't need any of this. Get rid of it all. This is just some suggestions they give us so we can set up our task runner easily. By the way, you can set up many task runners here, not just this. Things like that'll do other things for you, not related to TypeScript, because VS Code is very, very versatile. For example, you can run things like C#, right in VS Code. You can use VS Code to develop things for Unity instead of mono-develop, right? There's many other things you can do with VS Code. Okay, so I've changed my stuff. I've got everything configured, and now I've got a bunch of errors. And there's a bunch of errors. I've got 18 errors here that I got going on, right? Tons of them. And why? Because I don't have any type definition files, right? So how do I add type definition files for this stuff here? That's very, very, very easy. I've got to install Node, right? So again, I'm going to right-click here. I'm going to go into Open in Terminal. I hate when it does that, because I opened it up before. It's my fault. CD, week 8. And in here, inside my folder, I want to add in the same thing. So I'm going to do one of the same thing we did last time, which is tsd, right? Install node -- save. So what it's going to do is going to go out to type definition library and grab node and put it in. And I also need express. So tsd install express and then -- save. I also want to put in other stuff, right? We have passport, mongoose. Let's put that all in too. So tsd install mongoose -- save, right? And tsd install, hold on a second, passport -- save. We also have passport local, right? So we got to put that in there too. So tsd install passport. You get what I'm saying, right? I got to put all these modules in for me to avoid my errors, right? And all I'm doing is I'm adding in stuff, and there's a bunch more, right? You know, notice how I'm still getting these errors because it still doesn't know what my type definition files are, right? Even if I was to create a app.ts file, my app.js file, and it's going through every single one of my JavaScript files to recompile them, anything that it sees that it needs to recompile, it's taking a sweet time to do that, right? And again, if you look at my task.json, this is all good, right? I haven't changed anything here. It's taking sweet time, sweet time. Look at that. Look how long it's taking to do that. Because there's some issues. I'm going to have some errors. Now it shows no errors anymore. If I go back to my app.ts, my errors are gone, right? And it's still working. This thing is still going, right? Still trying to find problems, right? Here's one that I can tell you that it won't do. What if I do this? So in my var, I change var from var, I go to import. Okay, now look what I'm getting with my express. When I look at my express is of type express, right? Well, that's interesting. Once I've done that, when I go down and start using Express, right? Anytime I want to use Express afterwards, and you know that Express we can get things like, there's an error right there. Look, there's a error status does not compute because status does not belong to error. Right? So I'm trying to tell you, it's going to find all kinds of errors in our code. Here's something. Function, right? Argument of type error, request response, request function, void is not assignable because it doesn't understand what that is. And so it's going to find all of these buggered errors all over the place. And the reason for that is because it doesn't know everything. Let's add path. So again, I'm going to go in here and add the rest of my stuff just to show you, and then we'll do it properly next week. So I'll say tsd install favicon. tsd, oh darn, let's do that again. tsd install serve favicon, I'll be okay. Favicon -- save. It's going to find that, right? tsd install, right? I'm going to go down the line here, right? Morgan -- save. tsd install cookie parser. I think it's spelled the same way. Cookie-parser, cookie-parser -- save. So it's continuously adding more and more stuff in there. tsd install. You see where I'm going with this, right? Body-parser -- save. tsd install express-session -- save. I'm doing the - save so it kind of keeps track of all the stuff I'm doing. I've already added in Mongoose and Passport. Let's add Connect Flash. So tsd install connect-flash -- save. Whew, man, that's crazy, right? Lots of stuff. But now, the great thing is, if I go through this thing, if you look at, here's my task runner. If I go through and I look at my app.ts, some of my errors have gone away. Some of them are still there. And the reason for it is because it doesn't understand some things, especially if I start going back to my server.js, as an example, doesn't have anything in there. There's nothing wrong. Why? It's a JS file. Until I convert it to a TS file, there's no TypeScript. There's no typing. There's no something called code hinting. My app.ts is a big one to fix, and we're going to talk about how to fix this next week. And the reason for this is because error. Notice how request, response, next. There's different variables here, and if I was going to go with pure TypeScript, I have to give these types when I create my function. So your question should be to me, Tom, what is the type of request? And if you notice, if I hover over it, it says express.request. And that's what I put in here. So if I was going to explicitly declare these things, I can do that by going express.request. That's the type. And this one is express.response. And this next one is any, by the way. Any. Which bugs me. By the way, when you say any to something in TypeScript, you know what you're doing? Flipping at the bird. Right? You're saying, forget TypeScript, I don't want to use you. I'm just going to put any, and that way it'll be cool, right? So I can avoid your typing. Well, why are you using TypeScript then, right? If you're using TypeScript, you're using it for feedback, to see that there's problems, right? So status, it doesn't know what status is because error is a type error. And if you notice, if I go error, if I hover over error, error is of type error. It's an error type, right? It's inferred, right? So that means that this error class is of type error, right? That's what it means. And there is no status built into type error. So there's two ways for me to fix this. I can monkey with my, what's going to call it, my error, kind of create an error.d.ts file, right? Which is crazy because I don't even know what error it comes from. I could do that. Or the other option is I can create a subclass of my error by using the extends keyword in TypeScript. Because you can do that. You can make subclasses and use interfaces and inheritance in TypeScript just like we can in C# and in Java. I'm not going to do that today, but I just wanted to show you the code hinting that we can get from doing this kind of stuff. One more, and then we'll end this little demo. What about if I do the same thing to my Passport, which is where you guys had all your problems? You're like, Passport sucks, you know, whatever. I don't understand how it's done. You know, kind of stuff. Let's rename this thing. I won't call this passport.ts just for a second. So now passport.ts has typing. If I scroll down, I can see if there's any issues right now. Let us transpile, right? So Control-Shift-B, there's my my JavaScript file, and this is my my TypeScript file. Notice that there isn't any errors. How come? Because this user, notice how it's any, done, any. This is an anonymous function. User is any. Everything is any. And when I have a bunch of any's in my file, we got problems, right? Here's something else. If I try and use, the best way to get typing is for me to use my imports. So if I go by my app.ts file again, and instead of me using vars, like for path, I can use my import statement. So import. Import, let's try this again. Import, let's try to convert them all. Import for favicon, import for logger, import. And what this does is it gives me more code hinting for all these things than I even want. Yeah, talk about import. And then I'll just copy and paste. How about that? Because that's just faster. Okay, cool. So I got all these things now. I still got 11 errors. But the great thing is if I go var app, or if I go app.set, remember we had problems remembering the code hinting? So let's use another app.use and see if we can, what it gives us. Watch. Code hinting with express. App dot. And now I get all this. App.disable, app.enable, app.length, app.mime, app.param, app.patch, app.post, you know, app.use. Let's try that, app.use. And if I press open, it gives me code hinting. It says, here's what, I've got 8 different overloaded constructors for this one. One of them is a handler with an express request handler, and it returns an express application. That's what it does, right? That's one. And if I actually click this, I can go to the next one. Here's another option. A handler with an express error request handler. That's what it is. Another one is a string with a handler with an express request handler. Another one is, and so on. You can see that there's different overloaded methods. And that's why when you see app.use all different all the time, because you've got a bunch of overloads on express. And that's why it looks the way it does. Remember, now I'm getting code hinting on express, which is what we would have wanted, you know, 5 weeks ago, right? Wouldn't it have been nice to get code hinting on express to give us errors, right? We made them. We don't have them there now. We're gonna fix these things later on. Next week, we're gonna build an express app with TypeScript in mind, right? And when we do that, it's gonna provide us all the code hinting we need. Any questions around TypeScript? Again, it's a tool. We talked about these things. Let's get into a few things that I want you to do for next week. All right, and then we'll let you go for the day. I'm going to close this off now, right? So I won't bother you anymore. These people are like losing their mind. All right, I can see it already. They're glazing. They've been glazing for hours. All right. So one thing to note is that next week, your assignment number 2, just to remind you, is due. Right? So that's going to include your authentication piece. You're going to add authentication to your personal portfolio. Right? That's due next week, Wednesday at midnight. I extended you 1 week to give you a breather, to get you to understand the stuff that we're talking about right here. Right? That's one thing. So next week, Wednesday at midnight, your next assignment 2 is due. Right? And next week, I also want you to do a couple things. Over the next 2 weeks, we're going to be starting to learn Angular. Right? In prep for that, I want you to go to angularjs.org, right? Under Learn, please go here with me so you can see what I'm talking about. There's a free course that I want you to do. And it's called Shaping Up with AngularJS, right? This is done with Code School. It's a free course that Google is sponsored for us to go and do with Code School. It's a very cool course. It gets us to go through and understand the basics of Angular. It has 5 levels. Each level probably takes around 30 to 45 minutes, all right, to do. I want you to do all the levels, right, over the next 2 weeks, right? And why am I not giving it to you for next week? Because if I gave it to you for next week, no one would have it done, right? That's the reason, right? Accompanying this, I'm going to give you a little lab. There is a little gem store that you're going to build right here with this Flatlanders gem store. That's part of the tutorial. right? I want you to build it, but I want you to use your own assets. So there's going to be some picture assets or whatever. You can use whatever assets you want. And we'll talk about that next week again. So start off, please don't wait till next week to start this. This takes time. And if I want to have a good, intelligent conversation with everybody around Angular, you need a little bit of background in order for us to make it worthwhile to do AngularJS. It's big, right? It's like it's learning a whole new front-end view, if you will. It's a view manager or a framework for front-end, responsive front ends. And I don't mean responsive as in responsive web design. I'm talking about responsive as in interactive and you know, something that's a dynamic front end. All right. Angular plays nicely with the whole with Node, Express, and Mongo. It does play nice. But for the mean stack, even though it's called the mean stack, we also call it the full stack, mean stack, full stack. You can replace Angular with any other front-end technology. And I should mention a couple more for you. One of the really popular ones out there is React, React.js, right? Which is a JavaScript library sponsored by Facebook. So the competitors of Google, right? Google, Facebook, banging heads all the time, right? They want to take market share. So those are the big ones. And the other one, other big one out there that I would probably say for sure is Ember Js. Right now, those are the kind of leading ones that are out there that you want to kind of look at. Emberjs.com. These are all front-end frameworks. All of them use some kind of handlebars or mustaches, if you will. We'll talk about what that means, right? They have their own view manager, so we're going to stop using the view manager that's built into Express. We won't use those kind of view managers anymore. We'll use Angular. Angular has its own templating, all right? We're going to use Angular templating. And again, if you chose any one of these frameworks, it would still be considered a full stack, as long as you had one of these in the front, Mongo, Node, and Express in the back, right? That's full stack, right? By the way, you can replace Mongo with something like Firebase, right? Firebase is a very popular option out there as well. If I go to Firebase, that's very similar to something like MongoLab. Firebase has its own version of MongoDB equivalent or NoSQL database out there. All right, so again, Firebase, it's got some kind of NoSQL server. Again, considered full stack. So NoSQL, Express, Node, and then something to do with, like I said before, with some kind of front end. Like it's got to be an Angular, it's got to be an Ember nowadays, or React, something like that. For your final project, again, keep in mind as we go forward with your final project, Angular, like I said earlier today, is an option. I'm not going to force you to use Angular because we're just now learning it, right? And now it's week 9. Next week 10, by the time we're going to talk about it next week in week 10. I'm also going to talk about your final project next week, right? So you're getting your final project, so there's going to be new technology you're going to implement. So I'm going to be talking about this new technology over the next several weeks, right? But I don't expect you to fully use it unless you want to challenge yourself. And if you challenge yourself, I'll reward you with bonus points. That's the way it's going to be. Okay? Questions? So next week, please do your code school, Shaping Up with Angular. On Blackboard, I've put the full, kind of a PowerPoint as a support for doing this tutorial. Right? So if you forgot, you can always look at your PowerPoint to help you do your tutorial. It's right there. Okay? So please look at the PowerPoint up on Blackboard. Okay? And please start your tutorial as soon as possible. Any other questions before we go for the day? Guys, take care. See you next week.